want to welcome you all to a very special OVA luncheon. Not your typical OVA luncheon. First of all, we actually are overlooking a different scene from the windows, and we're at a different venue. And also, we have a little bit of a different structure to our luncheon today, so I want to welcome you all. It's a very special luncheon in many ways. My name, by the way, is Jim Wiseman. I'm the president of OVA, and today's luncheon, which is going to be focused on the Medical Mart and Convention Center, holds a special little place in my heart, not only because am I involved at a personal level, my involvement from bioenterprise, where I actually have a day job. We're very intertwined with the efforts that are going forward with the Medical Mart, but from an OVA perspective as well, the organization is a regional organization focused on economic development, focused on the entrepreneur, on the venture community. And one of the things that we have really thought about and focused on over the years is how do we grow that community? How do we really get it going to the point where it can be a key driver of our economy? And as we look out the window right now, I think we are seeing the building and hopefully completion in a matter of maybe 6 to 8 months of an investment in this region that will have a tremendous impact on economic development for us going forward for many decades. So with that said, and I'm not going to steal too much of the thunder of our speaker, I will reiterate something that our county executive, Ed Fitzgerald, mentioned about the structure that you see before you. He mentioned this the other day. There were really 3 main challenges that the region faced, the county faced when they first put this forward, and that people kind of tasked them with on a going forward basis once they had put tax in place. One was, could the county actually pull something like this off? Could they organize and pull something like this off? And I think we've seen by the fact that the county has really changed the way they operate. We now have a building going up several $100 million that is ahead of schedule and under budget. That's a tremendous thing. So that is one. I want to congratulate the county and the construction crews who were really the drivers for that. 2, people wondered whether a convention center itself could really make any headway in this region. And to date, and I'll let Dave give the update, there are I think over 40 committed conventions to the convention center, and we're still, as I said, we're not going to complete it until next summer. So that's a tremendous check in the box as well. So that's number 2. And third, there was always the question of what would go on with a MedMart, and what was a MedMart, and would anyone ever commit to it? And I'm going to let Dave give the details on this, but this week we saw that the box was checked for the MedMart as well. So the county and the region were 3 for 3. We're going to continue to grow on this. And with that, I want to introduce very important individual, Dave Johnson, who is a vice president with, technically I guess it's with the Medical Mart and Convention Center, also MMPI. And Dave is going to walk you through a little bit about both the Medical Mart and the Convention Center, and then have a few minutes for some Q&A, but more importantly, for those of you who are willing to weather the storms that have passed through, we're going to actually have a tour of the Medical Mart and Convention Center. So with that, I want to introduce Dave Johnson.
Good afternoon, everybody, and again, Jim, thank you for the gracious invitation to visit with you a little bit today. What I'd like to do is, Jim mentioned some of the highlights, just walk you through this project, because certainly those of us here in Cleveland over the last now 8 years have heard about this project, and I'm pleased to report that all you have to do is look across the street. I'm amazed when people still ask, are you guys actually building this? Is it under construction? Well, kind of. So I'm just going to walk you through the project real quick and then have some time for questions. Go ahead and flip to the next slide. First of all, what is it? It's a $465 million project. What most people don't realize is the Medical Mart, which gets all the publicity and frankly has the brand. You know, when I call somebody on the phone, it's Dave Johnson from the MedMart. The Medical Mart only represents a quarter of the space. When we walk through the site today, you'll see just how big this entire space is. It's 1.1 million square feet. The Medical Mart's about 235,000 square feet. The rest of the property is over 760,000 square feet. So we'll go ahead from there. This, of course, was the story in the front page of the Plain Dealer yesterday. Again, as Jim mentioned, answering that third kind of question we all had in the community about whether or not, what was this project, who was going to be in it, was it really going to work? And at the conclusion of the Cleveland Clinic Innovation Summit on Wednesday, County Executive Ed Fitzgerald introduced Tom Gentile from GE Healthcare, which is a $12 billion division of General Electric based in Milwaukee. The GE Healthcare and the Cleveland Clinic have signed on to be anchor tenants. The two of them combined, while they're still working on their square footage and exactly how much space they're going to take, because what they're doing now is like us today on a hard hat tour, they're doing the same thing with their hard hats on over there, determining exactly with their designers exactly how their space is going to build out. But the two of them together represent more than 8% of the total rentable square footage in the market. So they're two large names to get us kicked off. So I inserted that one this morning because it's so good. If you read the editorial in the PD today, it was terrific because it really makes you feel good to be a Clevelander. It's like a Browns winning streak. Kind of. So, okay, we'll go to the next one. Again, project by the numbers, very simply, just over 1 million square feet. Project started January 3rd of 2011, and as Jim mentioned, this is rather remarkable. Not only is it going to be a LEED Silver certified building, not only did we have to demolish and remove over 500,000 tons of debris from the site. That was concrete, that was dirt, that was everything else you'd find as we removed not only the old Cleveland Convention Center, which had really put us out of the game in terms of being able to bring conventions to Cleveland, but also removing 5 above ground buildings right across the street here. We removed the Justice Center parking garage, the Chicago Title Annex building, the County Annex building. Right across the street here was the 113 office building, and then the building with the greatest return on investment in Cleveland history. At the time, it had a market value of $200,000 and sold for $3.2 million. That would be the Sportsman's Restaurant, which took a grand total of about 4 minutes to demolish. I think they blew on it and it fell over. But again, it took us about, just to walk you very quickly through construction, it took about 8 months to do demolition and excavation, to get everything off the site so we could start. That started in January. As we got into last fall, that's how quickly this project has come about. Last October is when the steel arrived on site. And we can go to the next slide. The steel arrived on site, and over the course of the next 9 months, crews put up 12,200 tons of steel. The building we're in right now, attached to Key Tower. Key Tower at the time it was built used more steel than any building in downtown Cleveland history, 11,800 tons. We've used over 12,000 tons of steel, making it the largest project in downtown Cleveland history, just in terms of the sheer magnitude of how much steel went into this building. And I love some of the numbers, the fact that it took 233,000 bolts to hold it all together. If you strung the steel columns end to end, they'd go from here to Cincinnati. It'd actually go into Kentucky.
High-speed train?
Well, actually, yeah. Had we used the steel, we could have just, put a monorail in, and we would have been all set. It would have been like a Disney train. Okay, we can go to the next slide. But what this does, I want to flip the conversation. We'll get back to the medical mart in a minute. This puts us in the game as a convention city. Convention meeting planners look for 5 things. When they're going to book a convention, when they're going to decide to go to a city for a convention, they look at 5 things. We had 4 of the 5 things. The 4 things we already had in place: transportation. It's easy to get in and out of Hopkins. We have terrific transportation to get downtown to events. Hotels. We have 4,600 hotel rooms downtown. There are 7 hotels that are on the books to be built or major refurbishments that take place over the next year and a half. The biggest one, of course, is right down the street from us, the Crown Plaza, which will be reopened in spring of 2014 as a 481-room Westin Cleveland Convention Center. That's what it's actually going to be called. So they're rebranding to actually name it right next door to the building. So transportation, hotels, And then amenities. What things are there to do in your community? And of course, I've drunk the Kool-Aid. I believe in the city. I love Cleveland. My wife and I have lived here for 3 years, and we love all the things there are to see and do here. We love arts, music, theater. I worked in athletics for a long time, so I love sports. Everything's right here. And we have all the different amenities, the things for people to do when they come to a community for a convention. So, transportation, hotels, fun things to do, great restaurants, bars, fun nightlife scene here. And last but not least, and my wife and I lived downtown our first year here in Cleveland, safety. This is a safe community to get around. But the thing we didn't have, the thumb that we didn't have among meeting planners, is we didn't have a facility. That was the most important thing. We had really gotten out of the game in terms of being a competitive city to bring major meetings here, whether they're healthcare or non-healthcare. Next slide. Why Cleveland, and why is this our niche for bringing healthcare related meetings here? Because we call it the nation's medical capital. We have the best healthcare providers in the country right here. And I've had the pleasure to visit with Steve and with Phil a little bit over the last couple of days to really talk about what's going on, for example, at UH, just like Cleveland Clinic, just like Metro, just like the terrific VA facility, and then Sister Judith Ann's Sister of Charity, St. Vincent. So there's a lot of good things happening here in terms of healthcare providers. Next slide. But beyond that, and to speak to you as entrepreneurs, the number of businesses that make things here. And County Executive Fitzgerald, Jim, talked about this. This is a city that's always been good at making things, manufacturing and making things. Making things out of metal and steel and rubber and plastic. And as we've gradually shifted from making car parts and things like that, many of these pieces and parts are now going into making medical products, medical devices and other products like that. So you can see just some of the numbers. Basically, if you just, a very simple number there is about 1 out of every 3 people in this region work in healthcare. 480,000 people working in healthcare. That's about 1 out of every 3 in the region. So, next slide. Convention center. As Jim mentioned and Ed Fitzgerald announced the other day, we have 46 conventions already booked. That's significant because we don't even have a building yet. So to be able to have 46 conventions already booked, meeting planners are always a little skittish, as I would be. I'm not going to book a meeting until I know you're actually going to be open, right? But we've already got 46 trade shows confirmed, roughly 60% are healthcare. It's not on the slide here. We can go to the next slide. You can see by year, we've already got 17 events that are booked for 2013. The largest of those is next summer. We open up in July of 2013, 2 months early and under budget. But we open up in July so that we can host the National Senior Summer Games. The National Senior Summer Games are basically the 50 and over version of the Olympics, so they're a little slower, a little more painful. But what we've heard so far from the organizers is we have 16,000 participants that are planning to come. Along with them, over 20,000 spectators, you know, the people that give them ibuprofen at night. But basically, think about that. 40,000 people are coming to our community next summer, and they're all going to be right here, along with the athletic venues around the city. Yes?
Is that done with the Sports Commission?
Yes. Greater Cleveland Sports Commission, Positively Cleveland, the city, and the county all work together to win that bid. But part of winning that bid is we needed an athlete village. There's also going to be 3 sports over here as well. I think there's bocce ball, I think, is one of the sports. Seriously. I don't know, shuffleboard. Watch it. But I know there are 3 sports, but there's also an athlete village that's going to be housed in the convention center. So we've already got 17 events booked for 2013, 12 for 2014, 9 for 2015. We just announced a big one today. This morning, Content Marketing is going to bring their convention here as well. So next slide. The community oversight. One of the things the county executives talked about, not only did we bring a terrific team in, and Jim is part of that team. Jim Bennett joined us as our senior vice president in April, and with him, he brought the power and strength of bioenterprise along to really develop a medical mart strategy. Who was going to be in the building? How are they going to use it? How are we going to attract not only innovative companies, but also some of the whales, some of the large commercial companies to come in as well. And developing and implementing that strategy, again, if you read the plain dealer this morning, kudos for what's happened in terms of developing and implementing a strategy over the last 6 to 8 months. So next slide. So there are 3 advisory groups. Ed Fitzgerald appointed a county oversight group. We have an industry advisory board. I'll show you the names in a minute. And then, the county council. So we provide updates to county council every month. Out of that strategy has come 4 themed floors. Those floors will not only house what we call single vendor showrooms, but then also multi-vendor interoperability showrooms. So for example, think of a theme, like the operating room of the future or something like that, where you'll have several different vendors go in together to develop a themed space. And you can see the different themed floors and kind of what we'll be using on those floors. Next slide, please. These are our prospects. Again, we anticipate the building, if it's not full, it will be close to capacity. The important thing for us right now, as we sign tenants, isn't so much the race to fill the building, it's the race to make sure we have the right quality of and mix of tenants in the building. So you can see our prospect list right now by category, get a pretty good understanding of exactly who we're going after. And this is exciting for Cleveland, not who we're going after, but who's coming to us. As we announce tenants, as we announce folks that are going to be in the building, as people are working together to collaborate and create these kind of multi-vendor showrooms, we now have companies coming to us. Next slide, please. The strategy, very simply, is by the end of 2015, this is going to be a place unlike anywhere else in the world. That this place will be a fundamental source of change. It will be a place that aspires to showcase what's possible in terms of healthcare innovation, healthcare commerce, healthcare education, and will also be a place that really enhances what we have here in Northeast Ohio. Next slide. These are the industry members. These are the folks that have helped us develop the strategy and implement the strategy. Again, with BioEnterprise, the clinic, and UH working together with the companies you see here, some of the biggest names in the healthcare industry that are not only advising us on how to use this space, but who should be in it. And of course, they're also significant prospects as well to be in the facility. Next slide. And then finally, one of the great things you see as you were looking out here, that's not the Brown's new practice facility, that's actually your new Mall B. Mall B and Mall C will have over 12 acres of grass. And that's significant for those of you that either live downtown or work downtown, in that we'll provide what Daniel Burnham originally envisioned back in 1903 when he developed the group plan for Mayor Tom Johnson at the time. The idea was creating a park-like space for those of us in downtown Cleveland. So next slide. Then I'll just go through a couple quick slides. As we walk next door, you'll see what it actually looks like now. This is what it's going to look like. So we can kind of roll through these. Gives you an idea, actually, just about looking from here on what the new mall will look like. We'll go to the next one. This is if we were over by Public Auditorium, looking back towards the Medical Mart. Next one. What we've developed, one of the problems with the old mall, if you ever spent time on the old mall, it had really become a series of crisscrossing sidewalks, cement, the fountain that was built in 1964 that didn't work anymore, and you didn't have real nice vistas and views of the lake. You couldn't even hardly see Lake Erie without walking back and forth. We'll now have 2 promenades, one on the east side and one on the west side, where you'll be able to have direct access to the lake. And putting my City Planning Commission hat on, the idea then is with this Port Authority levy, part of the Port Authority levy is building a pedestrian bridge to get us over to the lake, which is critical. You know, so nowadays when you want to get to the lake, you have to walk down East 9th, or you have to walk over to West 3rd, or you have to use the Browns Bridge that was built when Otto Graham played quarterback. You know, now you would have direct access to the lake. It'd be a weather-controlled, weather-protected pedestrian bridge. So we'll now just kind of roll through these. View from Mall B. You can see as you look out the window, from St. Clair to Lakeside, the new mall slopes up about 28 feet. That's done for several reasons. One, it gives you a terrific grass amphitheater up on top to have events. Think Brown Super Bowl rally or something like that, okay? But it gives you a great, all kidding aside, it gives you a great place to have outdoor events, concerts, things like that. In summertime, be able again to use this downtown space, but underneath it also gives you, so go to the next slide, a drop-off point along Lakeside Avenue. That's the main entrance to the convention center. There are two entrances to the Medical Mart. The main entrance to the convention center is up on Lakeside Avenue. It's got an overhang, so it's weather protected. Next one, please. Once you walk into the convention center, you'll see how you're able to get down to the floor. Next one. Now we're down looking at the exhibit hall floor. Next slide. Now we're on the exhibit hall floor. By the way, when they did the first rendering of this, it was great, because you look at the rendering, and the architects had put all this together, and they had a guy right here as one of these little stick figures they put in, and the guy was swinging a golf club. It's like they just grabbed one and thrown it in there. So it was Tiger Woods hitting a drive in the convention center floor. Next slide. As we move north, and we'll do this today on the Hard Hat Tour, north of Lakeside Avenue, we have a 32,000 square foot column-free grand ballroom. That's the largest ballroom, not only in downtown Cleveland, but one of the largest in the state. Next one. Again, one of the things with this building also has is terrific pre-function space next to the grand ballroom and meeting rooms. Next slide. Meeting rooms themselves. Again, especially in the healthcare meeting business, people want breakout space. They want to be able to have smaller sessions. The facility will have 35 meeting rooms. We'll also have access to public auditorium. Next slide. And then the junior ballroom right across the street inside the Medical Mart. Next slide. The atrium, which we'll walk into in a moment, which again, as you walk across the street from right where we are right now, that puts you into the Medical Mart. Next slide. And then as we walk into the Mart today, you'll see this terrific glass wall that's on the east side of the building. Next slide. Facility cutaway just gives you an idea of what you're looking at here. And the next slide actually shows you exactly where everything is. Basically, the convention center is in an L shape. From the Mart over to Public Auditorium, from St. Clair up to Lakeside. Next slide. Questions? Yes, sir.
Do you have any reports on what's happening with the auditorium?
As you well know, part of the, maybe you don't know, but I mean, one of the things that happened 2 years ago when the county and city reached the agreement, that basically the county was going to buy the old convention center from the city. That was that purchase price of $20 million. The city was then going to use a portion of that $20 million to refurbish Public Auditorium, which they are doing and they have done. If anybody went to the rock and roll induction in April, the place looks great. They've really fixed up. They've replaced all of the doors. They've started to make some repairs that were very necessary from an electrical and plumbing standpoint. We separated the utilities. The utilities used to be combined between the convention center and Public Auditorium. So the city is continuing to make improvements. As part of our contract, we've completely redone this side of Public Auditorium, the side facing west. That was part of our contract to return it to what it looked like back in the 1930s. So we need Public Auditorium. Groups that come in are going to need Public Auditorium because there are 12 additional meeting rooms that we can use over there. We have access, 3 access points to get people and materials into Public Auditorium off of our truck loading dock and our exhibit halls. Other questions? Yes?
The people, the tenants of the facility, I guess I don't understand the sole purpose of the mark. Is it more marketing based? Is it more technology advancement? What's the real intent of the tenants?
In answer to your question, what's the mark actually going to be used for? Is it technology based or is it innovation based? The answer is yes to both of those questions. Because it's really going to be a mix. You're going to have some, one of our tenants, for example, they want to showcase their operating system within a hospital. But they can't necessarily drive you over to UH and peel the side off the wall and say, this is how our system works. But what they can do is they can showcase how the product works here at the Mart and then drive you out to UH or the clinic or Metro and be able to show you how it works. So everybody's going to use it a little differently. Some will use it as a national sales office. Some, like GE at Healthcare that announced the other day, GE is going to create a disease journey. So they're going to take a look at 3 diseases that affect millions of Americans: breast cancer, Alzheimer's, and cardiac, heart issues. And they're basically creating a disease journey, creating this patient that goes through an entire treatment. For example, on the breast cancer side, what GE is going to showcase is there are 14 pieces of equipment that are used to treat breast cancer. So they're going to use that in a different way. That will appeal to not only all of us in the room that just want to walk through and take a look at the place, the mark will be open to the public, but then also to physicians and other medical experts that work in those different areas. So everybody's going to use it a little bit different. It'll have a strong educational component, not only from continuing medical education, but also future doctor and nurse students as well. Question?
Have you approached the government to have some type of Health and Human Services office in there, maybe an HR compliance piece or something?
Not really. It's a good question, but not really. Again, you know, the mix right now is you're going to have entrepreneurial businesses, and that's what BioE and BioOhio is looking at working. You know, some kind of space where we can showcase what's great about our healthcare industry here in Northeast Ohio. You're also going to have some of these large companies like GE and some of the ones you saw in the industry advisory group. And then you're going to have an educational component as well, and then hospitals, health providers. I'm not sure the mix works for something like that.
Fits right into the educational piece. And that's what they just revamped, and they're going to be coming out every year with new regulations moving forward. They're already written, and they're already moving forward. And their office in Cleveland is responsible for writing those.
That's a good idea. Actually, let's trade cards. That's a really good idea. So, other questions? Yes, sir.
You touched briefly on all the space and everything that we walk around and see, and there's a lot of activity going on everywhere. Is there some kind of shuttle or moving walkways, and, you know, we don't always have the best weather, to allow people to move around and without having to jump into that gap, because you're just not gonna get there.
So
You like to get off at the airport from
Yep.
downtown?
I understand the question, because we are asked this one. So Ray asked a question here about how do we get people around? Are there going to be shuttles? Is there going to be, if you're in Minneapolis or Indianapolis, for example, they have a lot of those kind of little people gerbil things where you can walk from one place to another. Are we going to have that in Cleveland? Obviously, that's under discussion. All you had to do is pick up the PD yesterday. The casino's been trying to get their bridge built from their parking deck over to the casino really since 2 years ago. Right now there are discussions, but again, our project is this right here. What you're asking, Ray, is really a larger citywide question. From a city planning commission side, that's really a city planning issue in terms of how are we going to connect the Westin? How are we going to connect the Marriott? Are there going to be pedestrian walkways and bridges and things like that? Because again, yeah, we've got a couple months here that are a little questionable in terms of weather. So how do you get people moved around? We are working with the RTA. The RTA has developed a trolley system that's called the C line that's going to service this area right here. We're developing a whole parking strategy to get people to Lakeside and also to have a valet service to get them right in and right out, so we're not having to deal with the weather issue. You know, obviously if people come in, they take the RTA and it drops them off at Tower City, you're reasonably close if you hop on the free trolley to get to your hotel, and then it's a matter of getting here. So that's something that the city is talking about, the county is talking about. They've obviously asked us to get engaged as the casino is engaged, because there's $2 million in construction downtown right now. We've got to get people parked, and we've got to get them to the facilities they need to get to. You know, we can't have all the answers. We're the convention center on the mark, but it is kind of the multi-million-dollar question. Question, sir?
Is there anything to comment about parking availability in downtown? I know there's a lot of parking downtown, but it's amazing. Like even today, the parking lot that's here, that's underground, it's closed, it's full.
Question
And
about
for those of us
parking.
who work downtown, we know that this sort of ebbs and flows.
So just for our facility, we're developing a parking strategy that will incorporate several things. There's plenty of parking spaces, it's just they may not be right here. So it's how you get people around. So for example, you know, one of the things we're looking at right now is the lot at Brown Stadium, working with the Browns, because there you're talking about almost 1,600 parking spaces. As long as you use a shuttle bus, you can get people back and forth fairly inexpensively, fairly quickly. It's utilizing I believe there are 11 or 12 different parking companies that have lots in downtown Cleveland. So it's working with all of them to develop how we get people in their lot and then get them over here, for example, or get them to the casino, or get them to the ballpark, okay? I think RTA, putting my city planning hat on, RTA has a nice plan in terms of utilizing the trolley system more. I didn't even know the trolleys were free, but they're great. They're all over the place. They're little green things that are all over downtown. Those things are fantastic to get around. It's a matter of making sure people know about them and doing a better job of marketing that system. Right? No, I think we'll hit the hard hat tour, actually. And I'm very pleased to make an introduction. My colleague joining us on the hard hat tour today, this is Brian Milner. Brian is our Director of Operations. Brian spent some time with the Cavaliers in the Quicken Loans arena. Before that, he had a lifetime career with Aramark all over North America, and knows as much about operating a facility as anybody in the country. And we're thrilled to have Brian on board with us as our Director of Operations for the facility. So no one knows more about walking the facility than Brian does. So we'll walk you around. Now, a couple notes about the tour today. Okay, Brian is not dressed up as a village person on purpose. Okay, I will be putting the same thing on. What we have for you today, we have hard hats. Everyone has to wear a hard hat. Everyone has to wear a day glow vest, because again, this is an active construction site. On any given day, we have between 500 and 600 workers on site. There's a great deal of construction taking place. If you have what I would call sturdy shoes, that was a requirement today for the tour. Can't be open toe, can't be high heels. And again, this is for your safety, because there's a lot of debris as we walk the space. So for example, I wear these attractive boots. Hard hats, vests, goggles, also the shoes, and then probably the most important thing is we need to know you're on the job site. Every table has a sheet of paper. I need everyone at each table that's going to go on the hard hat tour. You have to sign this waiver before we can allow you onto the job site. We need to have an accurate number of how many people are on our job site at all times. For example, if the city gets hit by an earthquake, wait, that was 2 years ago, or a hurricane, oh wait, that was 4 days ago, we need to know if in case we have to evacuate how many people we have on site. So I do need you to sign this form. At that point, Jim, let's get everybody dressed. We'll get everybody a hard hat, a vest, goggles. Now, since we have such a large group, it'll take us several elevator loads to get downstairs. We will meet right down here on the street, right in front of the club. We have to cross a couple of streets to get over to the Justice Center, and then we'll cross over and enter the building. Okay? So we'll get everybody dressed.
Thank everyone for joining us. Our next OVA Luncheon will be taking place in January, currently scheduled for January 11th. And also remember, the Adventure of the Year Awards will be in June, so we've got nominees. Start thinking about them. Nominations will be taken on the OVA website at OVA.org. Thanks for joining us, everyone.